What's up, everybody? It's Aggie back after a long break, an intentional long break, and here's why. Today's message is about desire and details. So the last 6 months, I've been traveling around the country, being able to see some of the top amateur and professional and major league players through my scouting with the Red Sox. And what I've noticed very clearly is that I wanted to make sure that we put out content with ProSource that was applicable at all levels. And so I wanted to make sure that we could speak to the amateur player, speak to the amateur coach, speak to the professional player, speak to the professional coach, those sort of things. And one of the big things that I noticed throughout all my travels across literally both coasts, all around the country, was that desire and details were huge difference makers in people's games. So, for example, you would hear about a really good amateur player that you're potentially looking for to scout for the upcoming draft. And you would watch how he goes about his business. And you would see a kid that may have very little lower half mobility, range of motion in his hips and his hamstrings, in his back, in his arm, whatever the case may be, whether he's a pitcher, hitter, whatever the case is. And you'd see him go through his warm-ups, and there was really nothing dynamic about it. There was no focus on the hip rotation, the hip mobility. So I start to think one of two things. Either no one's told him, or someone's told him and he hasn't listened. Okay, so you start to have to make some decisions about that. And so as you get to know the kid, you ask those questions. It's really important what those answers are, because if he's not doing those things and he's been told, then either it's a lack of desire to play the game or it's a lack of attention to details. Now, this plays itself out in more than just baseball, but specific to baseball, you might have a guy who's just on the fringe. He's just borderline, and you're like, man, I like this kid, but I'm just not sure if he's ready for that next step into professional baseball. And then all of a sudden you say, man, I wish that he would just focus more time on desire or details. So we're just not sure which it is at this point. And then you say, okay, well, let's take a look at this next guy. And the next guy, he might be the same fringe player, but the way he goes about his business, he might have the same issues. Lower half, range of motion or lack thereof, not a lot of laxity in his body, whatever the case is, and he's been told, and then you see him go about his business and you go, man, this kid loves to play. He loves to focus on the details. And so now, as you're putting together the story over a year, you're saying, man, I've seen marked improvement in this player who was a fringe player who's now become a good player, and that player who I really liked at the beginning is still the same guy he was a year ago, and he keeps making the same mistakes and going down the same path without attention to details and without showing much desire. So why is that important? Okay, so as we put out content, we want to make sure that we're speaking to the amateur player, like I said, that we're speaking to the amateur coach, that we're speaking to the professional player, that we're speaking to the professional coach. But also in life, just in general, just the average person who's going to watch this that says, how can I get better? So for me personally, okay, I started asking questions about what I can do better as a scout, what I can do better to lead people. And what I found out was that I didn't necessarily need a master's degree. I didn't necessarily need X, Y, or Z. What I needed to do was pay attention to details in my own life, details with my wife, details with my kids, details with my nutrition, details with, my workouts at the gym, whatever the case may be. So my desire for those things has changed better, and my attention to details has gotten better. It's not easy, okay? But to the amateur player out there, to the amateur coach, to the professional player, to the professional coach, pursuing your dreams to be a major league player, a major league coach, or just the best coach at whatever level you're at, whether high school, little league, whatever the case is, it's not easy. But go to people, ask questions, observe, start to figure out the differences and what makes them a great coach or a great player, and then apply that to your own game, your own life, and see where it gets you. See how far you can go. Okay, so over the next several months, we're going to pour into some great new content that's going to be specific to positions, that's going to be specific to amateur players, that's going to be specific to professional players, and we'll try and really carve out some things to give you the best value possible. So as always, thank you so much for your questions, for your comments. Thank you for continuing to push me to be the best that I can be at this, and to try and lead you guys well as you're trying to navigate this wonderful game of baseball and this life. So as always, subscribe to value, and God bless.